All right. So this week's assignment was not a big deal. It was just listening to some music and then, making a timeline and talking about what's going on in the song. How was that for everybody? Did you feel like you learned something?
I thought it was actually really interesting. I picked "Somebody to Love" by Queen with Freddie Mercury, and I noticed that sometimes it gets tricky to figure out which side the music is actually on or which instruments. Because that piece kind of a lot of times it focused like in the center or using both left and rights, and I had to kind of just like the way I thought to figure it out was when I first hear it, the music change. Where is my instinct move to, the right or the left? Instead of really trying to focus and drive myself crazy.
Well, it's interesting. So give me one second, Tito. So Mitsuki, just do the best you can. All right, with that, I got that message there. Great. So it's interesting with Queen, and I go over this in Audio MIDI 1, but I can go over it a little bit now. There's different ways to record things. So let's talk about, and also at different points in the history of recorded music, things are recorded differently because technology is different and things evolve and things grow and different producers and artists have different styles. But let's go back about 10 years before Queen and or not even 10 years, 8 years before Queen. And the Beatles were recording. And when they would record vocals, if they wanted to overdub or add, let's say they recorded the rhythm section and the lead vocal, but they wanted to do some background vocals. Well, the three of them, John, Paul, and George, would stand around a microphone and each one would sing their individual parts. So somebody might be singing the bottom part, somebody might be singing the melody, and somebody might be singing a harmony above. And they would record it like that. And then once you get to the album Abbey Road and the song Because, what they did was they did that same process 3 times. So it sounds like 9 people. But each person is singing a different pitch from the other. So in other words, George might, like John might be singing a lower pitch, Paul might be singing the melody, and George might be singing the high note or reversed or whatever. But they're all singing all 3 parts of their harmony at the same time. And then they recorded that a second time and a third time. And that had a certain sound to it. What Queen did that was different from that was they let's say they had 3-part harmony. All 4 of them would sing the same pitch. So they would all sing the lowest voice of the harmony. Then they would do another one and they'd all sing the melody line. And then they'd all sing the top line, right? And that is interesting because what you can do with that is you could take the harmonies could all be sounding at the same time. And the lower note from your harmony could be in your left ear. The higher note for your harmony could be in your right ear. And the melody could be in the center. So that could also confuse you a little bit as to where it's actually happening, because you can hear very distinctly that note's in this speaker and that note's in that speaker. So it's a different way of recording. And I remember that when I was when I was very busy writing theme songs for sports programming, we utilized, depending upon the network, right, we would do things differently. So, for example, with when I would write something for Fox Sports, if I would write brass, I would use the Queen a technique where, let's say I wrote like 3 trumpets, I would have in 3-part harmony, I would have each trumpet do 3 passes and play each line of the harmony. And then I would do that for all the brass. And what's interesting about that is the sound becomes really pointed and it's a different sounding. But when I would do something for ESPN, I'd have them do it the Beatles way, where each brass instrument was doing its own line. And I'd overdub that a couple of times because that would be like a more regal, almost a regal sound. So these are all things that you would learn about recording and how to record instruments and to get a certain kind of sound. And so, I figured this stuff out by experience, and talking to people and studying some of these recordings to see how they did things differently and reading about it. And it's interesting. So I just hope that answers your question. So Let's see. Very fun assignment. Each time I listen to the piece, I started noticing something new. Yes, that's right. It's interesting because when you start focusing in on each instrument and following it around, right, you see how it develops over time, and that adds to like, how do you build an arrangement, right? So, so Tyler just mentioned the song September. So, you know, how is the bass line different in the chorus than it is in the verse, right? How is the guitar part different in the chorus than it is in the verse? And you know, how are the brass different, and how are the vocals different? And then you learn to start to study how the methods that successful recording artists employed, because it's not just Earth, Wind, and Fire, it's also their producer and the engineer. They all work as a team back in those days to create the recording. And like I mentioned last week, it's storytelling. You know, you start out, a story starts from you're growing a plant. You take your soil, you get your seed, you plant it, you water it, and it grows. Same thing with telling a story musically. It starts out with an idea, and how do you develop that idea over time? How it unfolds during the process of arranging the song. So the bass specifically was so interesting. Follow the hook pattern. Right. Well, you know, he's a great bass player, right? If you listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire songs, the bass parts are tremendous. Yep. And plus he sings great too, Verdine. They were a huge act when I was a teenager. Huge, huge, huge. So for the first part of the semester, we're going to be working with learning how to sequence something from MIDI. We're going to spend a little bit of time editing audio, and we're going to do one class on notation, very simple for those of you that aren't music majors or graduate students. I'll make it very simple for you. And then we're going to start dealing with recording stuff, which means that you're going to all have to, if you don't have it, make an appointment with Justin to pick up our recording kits. So we've got a kit in a case that has, well, the mic stand's not in a case, but in a case we've got a microphone, an audio interface, cables, headphones, windscreen, and you know, this is the part of the class that's much more difficult online than it is in person. You know, this part that I'm teaching now, this is okay online. We can work with this. You guys can learn, no problem. But it's going to be a little bit of a challenge when we get to that point of the class, but we'll get through it, and you'll learn the basics, and that's what this class is. So the first thing I want you to do is to create a place. If you've got your own, if you've got a USB microphone or an audio interface and a microphone, yes, you can use yours. But if you don't, we have them available to you, which most students do not. So what I want you guys to do is to create one place where all your work is going to be. And you don't have to have a second drive. For what we're doing, you can make a folder on your desktop and just title it RSF Projects. All right. And all of your projects will go into here. What I would like you to do additionally is to create a place where you can back stuff up. In the digital world, we don't think that things are considered to be safe unless they're in 3 discrete places. So what are those 3 discrete places? Well, one can be in your computer. If you've got a little USB thumb drive, it could be stored there. Or you can upload it to Dropbox, or you as a Queens College student have your own Google Drive, which has unlimited storage space. You can upload it to there. And then if something happens to your computer, your projects won't get destroyed. So what do I do personally? If you look on my computer here, I've got project drive, and then I've got a redundant project drive here that everything's copied to. I've got in my basement here, I've got a couple of hard drives that are backup drives. And additionally, every like 6 months or so, I take a drive and I mail it, FedEx it to my sister. So she's got it in her house, and she lives a 2.5-hour drive from here. In normal times, I would drive it there, but I haven't seen her since Thanksgiving of 2019. So I've been, posting her a hard drive with backups in case my house burns down, my intellectual property is not destroyed. So it's very important that you have backup. Additionally, for these first few projects, the files are not so big, so you could even email them to yourself. All right. So after you've installed Pro Tools, what I would say to do is to find it, and if you have a Mac, take it and drag it so that it's on your dock, right? I already have mine on my dock down here. All right, and so now I can launch Pro Tools from my dock very easily. Clicking on that. Now, if you've installed Pro Tools, the very first time you launch it, right now it's scanning all the plugins, right? And the first time you launch Pro Tools, this might take a long time. And then it understands which ones are in there. This next time through, it doesn't have to take so long. It scans through them and makes sure that they all work. And then it tells you if there's problems with some or if they're not authorized. But once it does it once, it'll do it much quicker the next time. So you'll open up Pro Tools and you'll get this thing here called the dashboard. And I went over some of this last week, but we're going to continue going over it as a review. This is where you create your sessions. And this is how I want you to set up the dashboard, because once you set it up once, it will open up like this every time. And some of these should already be set up properly. So you want to make sure that your file type is BWF or .wav. The sample rate is 44.1, so that's probably the way that it's going to come set up. If you click here, you can change on it, right? You want it to 44.1. Your bit depth, you want to make sure it's 24-bit. And then you want to click interleaved. This is for audio. And very, very, very important, you want to click prompt for location. Make sure that this is clicked. Otherwise, it will, if this is clicked, it will default save it into your document folder, which I don't want you to do. So prompt for location. Now, when we're working on projects, went over our naming convention. This is for the whole semester, all right, for all of our projects. So it's the title of the project, underscore, the date with dashes, underscore, your initials in capital. And then what it will say after that is .ptx, or the session file will automatically name it .ptx, so you don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to call this RSF class 2-8-21 underscore my initials. I'm going to click on create. And what will probably happen is you'll get something that looks like this, and it will say documents, right? If you click on this downward facing triangle here, or arrow, it opens this up, and you will either scroll here to find your desktop, or you can, if you've got it showing over here in the sidecar or sidebar, whatever that is, you can go right here, click on this, and you can save that. Now, before we look at Pro Tools here, let's take a look in our folder. So we've got this subfolder that has this right here. And does anybody remember what this folder is called from last week? It's 2 words. This folder is called the session folder. The session folder is a container, a box, a filing cabinet, a folder. And inside that folder are all the assets that Pro Tools needs to run your project. And a Pro Tools project is called a session. All right. And before, I'll write this here so it's easier to see. So there's two things to think about here. You've got the Pro Tools session folder, and then you've got the Pro Tools file. All right. It's very important that you understand the difference between these two things. The Pro Tools session folder is this guy here. It's, as I said, it's the container that everything is inside of. If you open this up, you'll notice that there are a bunch of subfolders: audio files, bounced files, clip groups, video files. And then there are two other files. There's this right here. Right? This is the session file. And the session file has a .ptx extension at the end of it. And then this is your wave cache file. Don't worry about that right now. That's just helps to draw audio files, but we're not going to be working with audio files for a few weeks, so we don't have to worry about that. So the big thing you have to understand the difference between is the session folder and the session file. Okay, the session folder and the session file. The session folder is the big container, and the session file is what actually is your Pro Tools session that you see right here. This session file has to access all the things that are in these files. Okay? Now, it gets a little confusing, right? Because watch what happens if I close this session. Watch what happens to those folders. They all disappear. All right? And the reason that they disappeared is we do not yet have any data that is in those files. So Pro Tools doesn't need them yet. All right? So Pro Tools creates these folders, these subfolders, as like empty boxes, right? That data gets put in as you create that data. If you have not created data that goes into those folders, when you close Pro Tools out, those folders disappear. But I'll open this up and you'll see these folders all come back, ready for any data that might go in there. All right, so session folder and session file. Why it's important? Because you work online today. You pass files and projects back and forth with your friends. If you were to just send me this file, it's kind of useless. What you need to do when you hand in your assignments is to take the session folder, right-click on it for a Mac, and compress it. And this is what you upload to Google Classroom. A zip file of your session folder with your session file inside of it and any assets you've created. That's the proper structure for sending and sharing and working with Pro Tools files, projects, or sessions, especially when you're collaborating over the internet. Is that clear, or do I need to go over that again? You can watch this video. I'm going to post it up online, which is a pretty good explanation of, I think, of the difference between the two. All right?
Professor, can I ask you a question about that?
Yes, sir.
So the main file that we have on our desktop, Recording Studio Fundamentals, that we talked about it last week, is the same thing that we're talking about today as Recording Studio Fundamental projects. Right.
So you're right. It's the bin that you're going to put all of your projects in.
And then these two files, the folder and the file, are to be saved within that.
Correct.
File. Okay.
Yes. So in other words, you'll have a filing cabinet, right, which is this guy here, right? And if I told you to name it something different last week, it's fine, as long as you know what it is, right? So that's your filing cabinet. And inside your filing cabinet, all your projects are going to exist. And what I would do if I were you, if you've got Dropbox or Google, you've got a Google account with unlimited storage, right? What you can do is just take this folder and drop it up here and upload it. And then every day, whenever you work, just at the end of the day, update that. Get used to backing your work up online. This is very small right now, right? This 12 kilobytes. So you could even just take this and email it to yourself as a backup. That's going to get larger as we work. It'll add more information to it, but these first couple of projects, you'll be able to send that. All right. So we're in Pro Tools right now. And this window here, yours is going to open up with all of these showing. This is the mix window, this guy here, and they may be in different spots, and this is the transport. You may need to use the transport depending upon your size of your computer screen. Just close this and close. This is the mix window. We're not going to be using the mix window this semester, so close that. And just show this window, which is the edit window, or the edit page. And this is, once you've done that once, every time you open up Pro Tools, it should default to this window. Now, there's a bunch of setup things I want you to do. If you do not have an audio interface and you are just working with the audio coming from your computer, and this might be different on a Windows computer, you'd have to research that a little bit, but in a Mac computer, if you open this up, setup window, and you go to Playback Engine, you'll get something here that says Playback Engine with a box with all, these are all the different playback engines that I have. Yours might say Pro Tools Aggregate I/O. Change it to built-in output. Built-in output. Then you're going to have, it'll come up with that dialog. You'll close the session and then reopen it. So once you've done it once, it'll stick every time. I have an audio interface that I'm hooked up to, so I'm not going to change it. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear me until I rebooted everything. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do to set up Pro Tools properly for our class is, and we went over this a little bit last week, and I'm going to go over it again. We'll go up to our Apple menu and we'll go to System Preferences. And this is if you're working on a Mac. You're going to go to Keyboard, and you're going to go to Shortcuts. And then you'll go to Spotlight. Make sure that these two are unchecked. All right. And the reason for that is that Spotlight will take over the computer, and there's key commands on Pro Tools that use these two commands, and you won't be able to use those key commands on Pro Tools. Excuse me, let me have my tea. Delicious. All right. So then next, keyboard. Use the F1 and F2 keys as standard function keys. Turn that on. Now, if you've got a mouse, and I'll talk about those function keys in a second, but if you've got a mouse, right, make sure that you've got the secondary click on the right side set up, because there's a lot of stuff that happens when you right click on the mouse. So you want to make sure that you've got your regular click, which is on the, for a right-handed person, on the left-hand side of the mouse, and your secondary click on the right-hand side of the mouse. Now, as far as the function keys go, those are, you might not have these if you've got a newer Mac laptop that has a touch bar. But if you've got like an iMac or an older Mac that has these, or if you have an external keyboard, these function keys do things. If they're set up normally, these two do the brightness of your screen. This does the mutes your computer, and these two do softer volume and louder volume. The regular function keys, like, let's see, let's do this. Okay. See this area right up here on the upper left-hand corner? I'm going to push these function keys and watch what happens here. You see how that's changing? Right? And this is changing. Function keys help you navigate around Pro Tools. Now, you can still do that stuff. It's a little more cumbersome without the function keys, but if you're able to do function keys, that would be very helpful. Okay. Now, if you have that set up like that and you want to change the volume, you would simply have to hold down the FN key here, and then these become like the icon, right? You're not going to see volume here because I've got an audio interface hooked up, which supersedes that. Okay, so that's as far as setting up your computer goes. And that's on one of the setup videos that I've linked to in... that's on YouTube on one of the playlists that I've linked to in one of the documents up on Google Classroom. I go over that. There are some preferences in Pro Tools. Now, once you get these things set up the first time, you won't have to do it again. All right. So preferences brings up this box here, and this box has a bunch of tabs. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what every one of these things on these tabs do. I only know the ones that I use. It doesn't take me long to figure out something new, but I'll watch a video and talk to somebody. But for what we want to learn right now is we're going to go to the Display tab, which is the first one, and we're going to make sure that our tooltips are turned on, both function and details. And we're going to organize plugin menus by category and manufacturer. And then over here in the color coding, I'll explain the tooltips in a minute. And then I'll explain this when we get to it, the category and manufacturer. Over here in the color coding, make sure that always display marker colors is checked. MIDI note color shows velocity. Make sure that both of those are checked. And default track color coding. Tracks and MIDI channels and track color. And I'm going to take a screenshot of this and I'll pop it into the chat so you can download it. Now, once you do that, Tito, you realize that if you want to change the volume on your computer, you have to hold down the FN key. You'll have to hold the FN key down on your laptop if that's what you have, and then these become the normal.
Okay, cool. I got it. Thank you.
Okay. One more thing to set up. Go to MIDI. And check automatically create click track in new sessions. MIDI, automatically create click track in new sessions. And that's because every time we open a session, we're going to want a click track at least for the beginning of the class. And this automatically does it. Now, if you forget to do that and you need to create a click track, you just hit the track pull down menu and it's at the very bottom. And it will create a click track for you. Okay, so this is like this first class, the first class or two, of going over the stuff. I know I went over it a little bit last week and I'm going it over again. And you're going to have to watch those, either this class video or those targeted videos on that playlist, right? This stuff, once you get this opening and the setup and everything together, you don't have to do that again, right? It just opens up with those preferences set up in advance. Okay, so we'll get to making music shortly. So this is the Pro Tools edit page, and it's broken up into multiple sections. This top part here is called the toolbar. This area here is called the rulers. This is your edit page, right? The edit area. Then there are lists over here on the left. And so I'm not going to discuss the lists today. Just you're getting more than enough information. You don't need to know those today. I will go over those in the future. So the first thing I'm going to talk about in terms of understanding the layout of any DAW, which is Logic, Cubase, Performer, Ableton, Pro Tools, Reaper, is understanding how to navigate around the page and understanding where things are and what they do. And one thing with Pro Tools that I want you to, so in other words, if you learn another DAW, follow this method of exploration and understanding, and it will help you really much quicker rather than just hunting and pecking. Before you do anything, just look around, see what these things are, find out what their function is, what they mean. So one thing about Pro Tools is that you can customize the look of all this stuff, and that there are sub-windows and sub-menus within everything. And so wherever you see a downward-facing triangle like you've got here, or an arrow like you've got here, and then all the way over here, when you click on those, another menu or another set of functions comes up. So if I click here, we get a way to customize our toolbar so that we can see only the things that we want to see. Now, most of you have laptops with 13-inch screens. Is that correct? Yes, maybe not everybody. Maybe a couple of you have like a desktop or a PC that's got a 15-inch screen, or maybe some of you have an iMac, but almost all of you have a 13-inch screen. It's tiny, right? And this is a 34-inch screen you're watching on, so I've got a lot of real estate. So what you want to do is make sure that this is only showing you the things that you need to see for today, for our first part of our class. All right? So we're going to click here. We do not need to see the zoom controls. So we've gathered that space, right? Now, you don't need to see synchronization, so you could turn that off. Output meters, if you can fit them in, I would like to have those on. Keep the MIDI input display and the track list open. So basically, this is what you would need to see. That's a lot less than the other way. Now, you might want to see the transport. If you do, you do not want the expanded transport. If this is taking up too much space, you can do this. If you want to see the transport, you can have the transport here. And then you can just pop it up somewhere over here so it's out of the way. But I don't really, I would like us to not have to use the transport at all, just to use key commands. But I'm going to put the transport up there right now just to show you a little bit. Yeah, we don't need to see the expanded transport. All right. So this is basically how you want this to look. So I'm going to open this up and I'll take a screenshot of that. And then I'll pop that in the chat window if you want to download it. All right, so the toolbar. Let's see, yours probably won't have the sub counter. Yours will probably look like this. So from left to right, these over here are the edit modes. And for the first part of our class, we want to use the grid mode, the blue one. Now, this is if you have function keys, right? That's F4, F3, F2, F1, F4. Just hit it once. If you don't have function keys, another way to get there is to hold the command key down. Oh, no. I'm sorry. No. Incorrect. I was going to say something that wasn't correct. I apologize. All right. So, and if you don't have function keys, you would just click on it. Now, make sure you click on it once and that it's blue. If it becomes purple, that's the relative grid. We're not working that way. So click there and make it blue. These are our edit tools. And the only ones that we're going to be using this semester, the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fifth one. Now, yours may open up looking like this, where all three are selected, right? That is, that's the Smart tool. Oh, blue and purple. So blue is the grid. So if something's on the grid, you can only move things from one grid point to another grid point. If something has a relative grid, let's say something is a little bit past the grid and you move it to another grid, it'll be that same distance past another spot. It's the next spot on the grid. So we're not worried about that right now. I don't want to, this is all confusing to get started with. Let's stay nice and simple. So we're just going to leave it on the blue grid for now. And right now, the way this is set up, it's set up for the Smart tool, which means that the mouse changes, the cursor changes function depending upon where it is on the edit screen. That's very confusing at first. So let's just click on the border here or click on one of these tools and it becomes inactive. Now, first one is called your trim tool. And notice I'm hovering over there and a little window shows up that tells me the name of that, the trim tools. And that's because we've got those tips enacted in the preferences. The second one is the selector tool. The third one is the grabber. And the last one is the pencil tool. Now, this next one is really important, and I would say maybe to write this down so you don't forget it. You can click on these to navigate, but a key command that will help you speed up is to hold the command key down. And if you press 2, it's the selector tool. If you press 3, it's the trimmer tool. If you select 3, it's the selector tool. 4 is the grabber, and I'm holding it down, and then 6 is the pencil tool. So you don't have to have your hand on the mouse at all. And learning key commands is essential to getting a workflow and becoming, as I said in the previous class, a Pro Tools ninja. All right, let's go over everything again. We've got our 4 edit modes. We're just going to be on grid, and if it's purple, just click on it again until it becomes blue. These are our edit tools: trimmer, selector, grabber, and pencil. And I'll show you how to work those before the next class. This right here is our counter. This lets us know where we are in the session on the timeline. Notice to the right, yours is going to come up the first time you open Pro Tools looking like this. This is minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. That's great, but we're musicians. We're going to work in bars, beats, and ticks. So the way this works is the first number is the bar or the measure number, and the second one is the beat. The third one is ticks. I'm going to go over ticks next week. Let's not worry about that right now, but that's the time or the subdivisions of a beat. Analogous to an eighth note, a 16th note, a triplet, eighth note triplet. But all you have to know for today is bars and beats, the first 2 numbers. So right now I'm at measure 1 on the timeline, beat 1. I can click in there and just type in 3, and I'm at measure 3, beat 1. I'm at measure 3, beat 3, or beat 2. So you can do that. Next here is the grid mode on your edit page. And what I would do is I would leave this set up. You got to enact it. You click there and it becomes green, like lit green. And then you'll want to make sure that it's set to bars and beats. There's a little triangle over here that you would click on. And make sure it's set up for our class right now to quarter note. This is your transport. If you click on this, it becomes record enabled. And you click on this, it starts recording, but I don't have any tracks to record with yet. So that doesn't quite work, as it will in a minute. Over here are our MIDI tools. And this is how I want you to set these up. I want you to have the little metronome, blue. And I want you to have the little wavy arm guy, which is the conductor track, blue. And up here you have something called the count off. Highlight that so that it's on. And it says 2 bars. If you double click on where it says 2 bars, it opens up this window. Set it so that it only sounds during record. And you can also, if 2 bars is too many bars for you to count before you start playing, you could set it to 1 bar. That's up to you. So only during record. So let me go over that again, because that's another setup. So this is our MIDI tools. We want to make sure that the click track is on. That's the little metronome icon, and that's like an old Franz metronome, or one of those that you see on an old movie. Make sure your conductor track is on. Make sure the count off is clicked. And if you double click on the number of bars on the right where it says 2, make sure that it's only set up to play during record. All right. So that's your toolbar. Now, below that is your ruler area. And rulers count things. Let's do a little setup first. So if you click here, the only ones that I want you to show are minutes and bars and beats, minutes and seconds, markers, tempo, and meter. And let me take a little screenshot of that, and I will upload it for you. All right, so I'm going to continue on with this. So we only need to see the bars, beats, minutes, seconds, tempo, meter, and markers. That's a nice, clean, all the information you need to know and all the things that we're going to learn on this semester. All the other things that are available here, they're mostly for film scoring, except for the samples, which I've never used. But time code 2, feet and frames, that all has to do with mixing a film, not film scoring, but mixing a film, dialogue, and Foley and all that stuff, and music also. All right. Now, one other thing that I want you to be good with is right here on the upper right-hand corner. There's a little tiny gray box that has the letters A and Z in it. All right. If you click on that, it becomes amber. And that's called key or keyboard focus for editing. And what's great about that is that you can touch one key on the keyboard and it can do stuff. So watch, for us, we're going to use the letter R and the letter T to zoom in and out. So let me make this track bigger. So I'm going to push the T key in, and you notice that on this timeline, I'm measure 1, and the very last one is measure 89, right? So if I push the T key, notice that the last measure is 65. I'm zooming in. And notice that these little lines here, these vertical lines are getting bigger, space between them. So I'm zooming in and zooming out just by pressing these keys, which is really great for helping you navigate through sessions. And if you just hold it down, right, it keeps going. It's kind of fun. So set up your zoom so that it's a comfortable number of measures. It doesn't have, 8, 10, 16, 12, something like that. Now, I've instantiated a click track here, and I did that by going here and creating a click track. And you can resize these tracks a couple of ways. So with Pro Tools and with all DAWs, there are multiple ways to do the same thing, and you might choose one depending upon your preferences as a artist or a worker or an engineer, or depending upon what you're doing. I do MIDI editing different ways depending upon the kind of track I'm working on. So you notice that if I hover at the bottom of this area here, the cursor turns into a cross. I can click and drag down and it resizes the track. And if I drag up with the mouse, it changes it. Over here, there's a little border that gives you track sizes. So I can make the whole track fit to the window. I can make it micro. Right? We're going to leave it medium. Now, the tracks also have a preferences and a setup. And for our class, I'm going to, right here, right above where the name click is, there's a little downward facing triangle. I'm going to click on that. And what you want to see is the instrument, the inserts, and the track color, and the I/O. Now, I/O is optional depending upon your computer and what you're doing. If you need the screen space, you can certainly uncheck that. But for now, we'll leave it on. So, instrument, inserts A-E, I/O, and track color.
Professor, only A-E, not the rest of them?
Correct. Yeah. I'm trying to just give you the minimum you need to work. Right? So that's part of the beauty of this, is that you can customize what you see on the screen to work with your setup. You've got a 13-inch laptop screen. Well, you don't need to see all that stuff. I got a 34-inch desktop screen. I can see more stuff. But I can certainly work on a 13-inch laptop. I've scored films on a 13-inch laptop. So it's definitely, when I'm not in my house on vacation or something. Yes, working on vacation, it's always fun. Okay. So, great. That's it. That's the whole semester. We're done. No, only kidding. So, how do you actually start to create music, right? Well, you need to add tracks. There are multiple kinds of tracks, but for our first assignment, all we're going to work with are instrument tracks. And this is really important. Stereo instrument tracks. I'm going to type that in the chat. Tyler, not samples in the timeline at the beginning of the semester. When we start doing audio editing, we will be working with samples. But no, we're going to be creating from MIDI. And that's basically what we're doing. But the instruments are sample-based. But they're not samples like you're going to pop a sample in Ableton or in Fruity Loops and work with it. Yeah. So let me just write this in here so you get it. Stereo, and I'm going to write it in caps, which is obnoxious, like I'm screaming at you. To add a track, this is your key command for adding a track. Hold down the command key, the shift key, so they're both held down, and press on the letter N like Nancy. Command, Shift, N. And if you had Spotlight set up, this would be difficult to do. That's why I have to turn Spotlight off. And you get a new window, new tracks. So the first thing you want to do here is you want to click where it says mono and change that to stereo. There's a lot of options. I don't think that your versions of Pro Tools will have these options, but just make sure it's stereo. And then here it's the type of track. There are many types of tracks. We want to scroll down to instrument track. stereo instrument track. Don't worry about the time base, which is what this is. It will default to ticks. I'll get into that next week, what ticks are. They're not vile little creatures who give you Lyme disease, as a hint. And then we're just going to title this for today, Piano. Now, when you're titling tracks, follow the same format for every track you name. So what I do is a capital first letter and then small case letters. I have a friend who's an engineer. Everything is capitalized. Or I've had students do all small letters. But you need to develop consistency. Consistency is really consistency in organization will make your life so much easier in this study. All right? So I've named this piano. And then I hit the create button. But before I do that, I made a mistake. Can anybody take a look at this and tell me what mistake I made?
I think you have 6 written there. Does that say 6? You have 6 tracks going?
Yeah, you can't see that, but you're right. It says 0 tracks. That's good. If you were on a large screen.
1.
Right, you need, 1. You can create as many tracks as you want. And we'll get into that in the future. But for right now, for today, we're going to create a stereo instrument track, and we're going to name it piano. And you notice that the track header is named already for you. And you see how this is highlighted? To unhighlight this, you hold down the Option key and click on it, which is a good habit to get into. Now, I'm playing my keyboard and nothing's coming out, right? The reason for that is that we don't have an instrument put into the signal path to create the sound with. So in other words, this keyboard is... Oh, okay. Yep, Tito. So I'll go over that again. To unhighlight this, hold your Option key down and then click on the highlighted area. All right? Now, let's talk about signal flow for a second. Give me 1 second to get a prop. All right. So this is a little Yamaha Reface keyboard, right? It's a piano, sounds, it's a little toy, but it actually sounds great and it's fun. So with this instrument, it's a self-contained unit. It's got little speakers, and if I had batteries, I could just turn it on, it would start playing. Otherwise, you have to plug it into the outlet on the wall to get sounds, which I'm not going to do. But when you press a note on this, it is sending digital information to the sound generating engine in this, a MIDI note. And the MIDI note has several parameters. It has the actual pitch, it has duration, how long you're holding the note down, and it also has the velocity. So those are 3 parameters of MIDI. And MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, and it's a method, it's a computer protocol method of communication in musical instruments. All right, electronic instruments like this, and in Pro Tools and Logic and all the DAWs. And MIDI was invented in about they started working on MIDI probably in the late 70s, early 80s, but it became available in 1984, and it was a revelation. So what it meant was that I could have a keyboard like this, and a module like this. This is a Moog synthesizer, all right? And notice in the back, there's a bunch of plugs, right? So I could have this keyboard set up, and I could take a cable out of this, what's called a 5-pin DIN connector, and plug it in to this DIN connector here. So it would be MIDI out from here and MIDI into here. And I could play notes on this keyboard, and then the sound would actually be generated from this keyboard or from this module. And at the time, it was revolutionary, right? There were ways to trigger using gates and using patch cables between instruments, but this was a standardized and easier and actually foolproof way to get it to happen. So I remember when I had my first couple of MIDI instruments, I had a Yamaha DX7 and I had a Juno 106, two synthesizers. And I remember the first time I plugged them in together and I started playing them, and I had this beautiful electric piano sound on the DX7 that I was playing. And then the Juno was playing a string patch. And I had these two sounds playing at the same time. And it was, wow, you know, in 1984, that was like an amazing, amazing thing. But to remember, internally with this, I want this right here. Internally with this, you play this note, it sends information to the sound generating portion of this keyboard, and it tells it the actual pitch, the note that's playing, with something that's called MIDI velocity, which I'm going to get into in a second, and the duration. So if I hold it 1, 2, 3, 4 off, that MIDI information will hold that note for that long. If it's 1, 2 off, that MIDI duration is shorter. Now, as far as velocity goes, I'll show that as soon as I get sound set up here. It's a little easier to do. Okay. So we have to do something like what this has built in Pro Tools. And this is with every DAW. So Tito, do you have USB output from the MIDI keyboard that you have? Because that's what we're using now in 2021. And the MIDI should go right into the MIDI input of the computer that you're using. I mean, not MIDI, USB,
that's what
USB.
I've been doing. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, no. If I wanted to record this as audio, so in other words, I could hook this up with a USB cable and have it control Pro Tools, no problem. If I wanted to record the audio off of this, there are 1/4-inch jacks in the back here that I would put that I plug into my audio interface. Now, a lot of audio interfaces have a MIDI port on the back, but we're not worried about that right now. The easiest thing for you to do is to just take your MIDI cable from your keyboard and your USB cable from your keyboard and hook it up to the USB input, one of the USB inputs on your laptop. So now that you've got this set up, and again, I go over this next bit in that playlist that I sent earlier, and it's in a very short and focused, very short and targeted video. It's about maybe 10 minutes long. So you go here, your first slot click, and you select a multi-channel plugin, and you either go to the instrument or Air Music Technology, whichever one you've got, and then you scroll down until you get to Mini Grand. And then this shows up. And
that's what I don't have. I don't have Mini Grand.
Do you have any instruments at all?
It just says instrument, and then I go to the right and it says expand to stereo.
Okay, so put that in for now.
Okay.
And this is just for Eve for today. Yeah, I've got a few instruments, don't I?
Is that because I didn't download the bundle or didn't complete
Correct.
the download?
Correct. So if you go here to factory default, click on that and then scroll to where it says pianos, acoustic piano, and just put in like number 4, the warm natural piano, and that'll give you a piano sound. And that's just for today.
Where was that factory default again?
So you see up here, it says preset.
Yes.
Click on the little folder below that and scroll up to where it says acoustic piano. And then you click on that, and there's another subfolder under that.
And then I go to acoustic, you said?
Yep. Number 13. And then you could pick the 4th one. I think that's a decent sounding instrument.
Warm natural piano.
Yeah. Okay. So now everything else we'll do, though, I'm going to do with Mini Grand, but you'll be able to follow along. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Because mine doesn't look like yours. Is that correct?
Correct. Expand looks much different than that. So close out that window. Do you know how to do that? It's the same thing. There's an amber tab on the upper left-hand corner. You just click on that button, and that window disappears.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. Great. Now, okay, so that's installed. So I'm hitting my keyboard. There's nothing happening. Right? Why? Because I have to... Somebody was going to say something?
Yeah, you have to hit record, the thing that turns red.
Correct. You have to record enable the track. Good job. That is this button right here. You click on that and it will blink red. So see where it says track record enable. Click. Boom. And now if I play my keyboard here, I should start hearing some piano. Okay. So that's basically how you get sound going, right? It's as simple as that. You plug your instrument in, you put an instrument track, stereo instrument track, you insert or plug in your instrument, you record enable the track, and it will play. Now, remember before I was talking about velocity? So there's three MIDI parameters that we're going to be working on in this first project. So this first project is going to take a few weeks to complete. You're going to do step by step. The first one is the pitch of the note, right? This is a C, this is a G, that's a B flat or A sharp. The second is the duration, how long the note is, and all the gradations in between. And the third is velocity. Now, velocity is characterized by how fast the key is going down on a keyboard. That's the easiest way to explain it. So if I have the key going down very, let's see. So if I have the key going down very slowly, you hear that's very soft, you can probably barely hear it. But if the key goes down fast, they've mapped velocity to change the volume of the sound. Right? So there's multiple layers. Now, there are actual numerical values that go along with that, but again, baby steps, spoon feed you little bits of information at a time. So the three MIDI parameters that we should concern ourselves with are note, the pitch of the note, the duration of the note, and the MIDI velocity. Now I'm gonna record something, right? I want to pick a tempo that's comfortable for me. Right here, Pro Tools defaults at a tempo of 120 beats per minute or 2 beats per second, something like. I want to have something a little bit more moderate. I want to have a different tempo. To change tempo, first at the beginning of a piece, the first thing you do is hit the return key. All right, so I hit the return key, and you can see that my counter is back at measure 1, right at the beginning of the piece. And I'm on my tempo ruler. There's a little plus sign to the far right of the tempo ruler. Just click on that, and the tempo change comes up. And for right now, I'm just going to type in 80. And now you'll notice that this number here changed from 120 to 80, and also right here, it changed from 120 to 80. And I'm going to play something. Now I've got a count off of 1 bar. You might have yours set up to 2 bars, and maybe I'll put it back to 2 bars for today. All right. Now, to get Pro Tools to start recording, multiple ways. I have an extended keyboard. I simply push the number 3 over here, not up here, but over here. Oh, wait, does it work here? No. All right. This right here. What you guys will probably do, and if you've turned off your spotlight, you'll be able to do this, is hold the Command key and hit the space bar. Manually, you would click on this and then this. That's really cumbersome to have to grab the mouse or your trackpad and move up there. Simply better to know your key commands. So Command, spacebar, which is what you're probably going to be doing. And then I'm going to count 2 measures, which is 8 beats, because I'm in 4/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Hit the return key. Now to play back, you hit the space bar. I don't like that. I want to do it again. What do? As is on every Mac or application, you can undo. Command Z. It disappears. I'm going to do that again. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Hit the space bar. Now, make sure that it says measure 1 before you start playing. If it doesn't and you don't go back to the beginning, I'll teach you how to set that up next time. Just hit this return key so that no matter where you are, if you hit the return key, it goes back to the beginning. And then you can hit the space bar and it plays back. Good. I don't like that either. I'm going to do it again. The tempo's too fast. I want to play something a little slower. So I'm going to change the tempo. Let's make it 60. Okay. Return. And I'll play something else. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, great. Yes.
Professor, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
About my I could never get the MIDI the MIDI Grand or whatever. And I finished downloading all of the plugins, but what I did accidentally was I just clicked, let's say if I go to multi-channel plugin, instrument only showed up as either Sibelius stereo or Expand 2 stereo, and Air Music Technology has a lot of things, air chorus, distortion, dynamic, whatever, but it didn't have the piano.
Right, those are your plugins. So what I would say is that download the piano again and reinstall it, and then you'd have to restart Pro Tools.
Which one is the piano one again? Is that Expand 2?
No, that's in the... no, it's Mini Grand is found in a suite called the Air Instruments First plugin, right? So in that screenshot that I sent...
Yes, I know where it is. It's under the downloads. I guess maybe I didn't download that one.
Yeah, correct.
But,
it's this one here, this top one. That's the one that you might, and you'd have to install that because there's other plugins that we're going to use, like Boom, the drum machine that we're going to use this semester. That's in that also. So this is the one that you haven't downloaded yet. Everything else is fine.
The First Air Effects Bundle 12.0 Mac.
No, First Air Instruments Bundle 19.12.
Okay. Also, what I have you there, my version has Heat Option Guide and Audio Plugins 10.2 Guide on top of that. It has like extra plugins.
Yeah, don't worry about that for right now.
Okay, and one more question. I'm sorry.
No worries.
So I went and clicked on Expand 2, and now it's that's the instrument that I'm using. How do I reverse that?
No, well, it's the only instrument you have, so work with that right now. So I just went over that with
Oh, okay. Okay.
with Eve. Did you see how I got her to change it to a piano sound?
No, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't follow.
No worries.
I'm,
So if you,
know.
so I'll put no worries. Not a problem. It's all good. Well, maybe it's not all good, but it's
yeah, that's what I have.
It's workable. Okay. So this is the G. We're gonna learn this because there's a lot of things on here that are useful in the future for you. But right now, we're gonna click here, right where it says factory default preset, factory default. Click there, and scroll up to number 13 where it says acoustic piano,
Mm-hmm.
and then the number 4 warm natural piano. Just use that for today.
So the factory default, go to 13, and then pick natural grand.
A warm natural piano, number 4. So that's, or any of those pianos. It's all fine for today's.
Yeah, because mine says ambient on number 4. Natural piano is 6 plus strings.
Yeah, that's good. Natural piano 6 is good. Oh, I see. You're looking. How about plus 04? Do you have that?
Warm natural piano, yes.
That's the one you want.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
No worries. It's good for everybody to see these things, as we're going through it, because everybody's going to have issues and questions. All right. So I just recorded my first piano track, and now I want to record another instrument. So I'm going to go Command-Shift-N, and I'm going to make a stereo instrument track, and I'm going to name this bass. And I'm going to create that. And it's highlighted, so I'm going to Option click on that name. And this time I'm going to click and put in Expand To. All right, so we were going to get here anyway, but these are the 2 instruments that we're going to work the first project with, Expand To and Mini Grand. And if you only want to use Expand To, that's fine. Don't worry about it. So I'm going to, right here is the preset. I'll go over these controls as the semester goes on. But for right now, we're going to click on this preset and we're going to scroll up to basses. And I'm just going to put a full finger bass. Any bass is fine, just for right now. Okay, and then I'll record enable that. And I hope I can remember the chord progression I played. Let me take a listen. Okay, so I'm going to overdub a bass track. So basically I'm going to play along with what I played. So I hit the return key, so I'm at the beginning of the session. I've got this track record enabled. I'm going to go Command Spacebar. I'm going to count my 8 beats, and I'm going to start playing. Whoops. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, and. Okay, so I made a mistake, right? Undo, do it again. Command Z for the undo. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. All right, I stopped there, right? Now, this is important to learn. I stopped there because maybe I wasn't sure what the next chord was, and I didn't want to play it and make a mistake. So I want to come in at that point that I stopped, which is right here. So you want to get the selector tool right here. And I'm going to click right here in the ruler area at measure 3, which is where I'm going to come in. And then what's going to happen is that we're going to get 2 bars to count off. And then it's going to start recording right at measure 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then save. Save often. Now, your first project is going to be to take a piece of music, any piece of music. If you can read music, you want to do a classical piece or a jazz tune. If you can't read music, just create something. If you can't play keyboard, just try to figure something out, right? And I want you to get started on this. So for next week, I want to see that you've recorded. And the way we're going to do this is you're going to build up an arrangement. And as you're building up this arrangement, I'm going to teach you edit techniques to make your performance better. There's one more tip I want to teach you this week. No, it'll wait till next week. No, that's all right. And I'm going to put like in our Google Classroom exactly how long and how many tracks we're going to be for each of the food groups of students that we have this semester between the MAP students and music undergraduates and graduate students. So I'm going to expect more from the graduate students and the music majors in terms of musical, in terms of music, right? From the math majors, I expect you to do a good job as well. But I don't expect you to sequence The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, let's say. I don't expect anybody to do that, but that's just sort of a point that I'm making. So get started. Get your session set up. Name it properly. If you want to do, like, for example, what you could do, right? Let's say I wanted to play a tune, right? That's the first half of all the things you are. I could record the whole bit and then start orchestrating it. It's too slow. I would add a bass line. I would add maybe some drums. Maybe I'd add a melody. But just get started on it and just do as much as you can in the first week. I've just dumped an insane amount of information on you. You're probably going to have to watch this class again and maybe watch some of those short videos. I want you to get started. Have something uploaded for me next week. And let's just go over how we're going to upload it again. Oh, before you do anything like uploading, make sure you've saved your session.
Could you share your screen, Professor?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Always ask me, right? It's never, I got a lot of things I got to pay attention to here, and I may forget to share the screen. Thank you so much for that. This is what I'm going to send, right? The folder. You are not going to send this. Please don't send this. Do not send this. Right click here. Oh, I don't need this one, right? You're going to right click here and you're going to compress that. And this is what you're going to upload to Google Classroom. So get started. If you just get through, 60 seconds or a minute and a half of a piano piece for next week, that's fine. If you do that and you add a second instrument like a bass or whatever, that's fine. But get the concepts and the ideas and get your computers set up for recording this stuff and just get started. All right. This is going to be like a multi-week project, and I am going to look at it every week and give you feedback and guide you through the process. The kinds of feedback that I give is that I make videos. I'll do it on my laptop over there, and I'll do videos where I have your piece up. I'll have your piece up on my screen. I'll do a screen capture, and I'll give you constructive criticism and some suggestions. and I'll upload that to a folder, and I'll send a link for the folder for everybody. It'll have your initials on it, so you'll know what it is. So it's almost like having a private lesson with me, and I do that every week, pretty much, for the semester. Yeah, just do the best. Tyler, this project is going to be done over multiple weeks. So you'll get started as soon as you can. But what I would do in the interim is watch this class again and watch some of those videos about the setup and everything, all right? Just, get stuff done. Be constructive with the time that we have. I can play it from here. So this is all sequenced. Everything here I played every note in. Right? Yes, everything done through Pro Tools. Okay, so the reason I played that, and it's really good to see it on the screen, is it goes through all these different styles of music, different tempos, different key signatures, different time signatures, and all that stuff is possible. And it's just, Pro Tools isn't the best MIDI sequencer out there, but it's still very, very, very capable. But it's great for audio. That's where it really shines. Anyway, I think that we're going to come to an end for today, and just do, Tyler, do the best you can until you get it going. What I would say is that it probably would be good for you to watch the videos and get up to snuff with how everything works, rather than doing the project twice.
Yeah, I mean, I could do that, and it's just like, it's no problem if I have ideas and then just
Okay, if you want to do that, that's that's fine. All right. So I will see you guys next week. I'll get the review video up in the next couple of days, and I'll look at your projects and give you some feedback on that. I'm sure that all those PDFs will read very nicely, and have a great week, everyone. Stay warm and safe.